Hi everybody, welcome to Dulcimerica. My name is Futch. Thank you very much for joining me. Today we are going to be looking at the Capo, that wonderful right hand or left hand best friend of the mountain dulcimer player when you're in a jam situation and you want to get into different tunings without having to retune your instrument. Now when I first started playing back in the dark a Capo for us was basically a pencil and a rubber band, and you somehow wrapped the whole thing around with the pencil on top to do what you had to do. But nowadays we've actually got these wonderful devices made by extraordinary people, and a good portion of them are these wooden capos that you see. They kind of look like an elongated U, and this is probably the most standard of all the capos that you're going to run into. And we'll look at a couple of other ones that you may run into as well that'll make your life maybe even a little bit easier as far as making those adjustments and changes while you are playing. So let's go back a little bit to the history of the mountain dulcimer and what it really represents. When the mountain dulcimer really started showing up in jam circles, there's a legend that says basically you had your guitar, your fiddle, you had banjo, you had all these really great instruments all sitting around, and then a mountain dulcimer player would show up and want to sit in. And the legend goes that those people would pick up their instruments and they would go someplace else. Why? Because they were chromatic instruments, able to play in any key that they wanted to. The mountain dulcimer was a diatonic instrument, and anytime somebody would call a different tune in a different key other than the one that the dulcimer was tuned in, the dulcimer player had to retune, and nobody really wanted to hang around and wait for that to happen. What does chromatic and what does diatonic mean? Chromatic is a 12-tone scale that most Western music uses. It's comprised of 12 half steps, and out of those 12 half steps you can play in a number of different keys. However, diatonic takes 7 of those notes out of the 12-note scale, and you are basically working in one particular key. Diatonic, in fact, basically means within the key. So the mountain dulcimer fretboard originally was laid out to be just enough whole steps and half steps to make up a diatonic scale. Once you were tuned in that particular mode, that's where you would stay until you had to retune to get into another mode. Now the 7 modes are a whole different workshop altogether, and we'll be getting back into that later on in the year. But understand that the modern mountain dulcimer isn't exactly purely modal. We can actually play a little bit in the chromatic realm because we've got extra frets like the 6.5, the 1.5, and their counterparts in the second octave. Nonetheless, we still don't have all the notes. We're still not a chromatic instrument unless you're a chromatic mountain dulcimer. And that means we have to be cunning and we have to employ a little bit of trickery in order to be able to play in a number of keys. And that's where the capo comes in. So the mountain dulcimer was set to play diatonically within the key. And let's just say, for example, that we had our D, A, D tuning. Now that's based off the Mixolydian mode, which is like the major scale, but it's got a flat 7th note. So if we start from open position and don't use any of the half steps and go to 7th fret, we're going to end up with a Mixolydian scale. There's the 7th note flat, and then we go up. The 6.5 fret was added so that we could actually play a major scale and raise that 7th note up a half step to where it needs to be for our major scale. So whenever you hear people talk about different tunings like DAD, DAA, DAC, even DAG and DAF, all of those basically have to do with the different modes and what we would have to tune into in order to utilize the scale on the mountain dulcimer. So let's just kind of forget about the modes for a second and think about us playing in DAD tuning. Now we've got the notes of the D major scale here, of course, and our melody is typically going to be played on that melody string. So in order for that drone to sound good, the backup harmonies, they need to be in the same key. So we're talking about D major scale. We have our root note, D on the bass string, and we have the perfect 5th, A on the middle string. That means wherever we play on the melody string, it's going to harmonize nicely with those. no matter where you go in the scale, those other two notes on your middle string and bass string are going to sound good because they're in tune with the key that the melody is playing in. So what happens if, hanging out in D major, the banjo player comes in and decides they want to do a tune in G? Well, luckily we have ways of just doing that without having to retune. But one of the easiest ways of accomplishing that is by using a capo to reset the drone, reset the fretboard basically, so that you can once again focus on just playing one string. So let me mention two different things here. One is a closed chord and the other is an open chord. This goes not just for mountain dulcimer, but for mandolin, guitar, banjos, ukuleles, etc. An open chord means you can play all three notes of a major triad or a minor triad without having to touch all the strings. For example, a 002 chord is an open chord because we do have all three notes of D major. We've got D on the bass string, F sharp on the melody string, and A on the middle. But I only have to touch one string. That's an open chord. We can use an open chord where we are playing two strings and not touching a third, like a G major 3-1-0. We have all three notes of the G major chord, G, B, and D. There's G on the bass string, B on the middle string, and D open on the melody string. So these are open chords where we're not touching all the strings. Closed chords are ones where we do have to touch all the strings in order to make the chord sound. That would be like a 1-2-4, A major chord. We have A right here, C sharp, and E. So we have to press down on all the strings in order to make that happen. So for many of these situations where somebody wants to play in the key of G or play in the key of A, you could certainly find those chords without having to use anything else. You'd have to close those chords, however, because our home key, where all of our open chords are located, is the key of D when we're tuned in DAD tuning. That's where your open drones are located. But what if you want to get those open drones and those open chords back while playing in the key of G or playing in the key of A? That's where the capo comes in. So I'm going to use the Ron Ewing capo here. A lot of other builders have these types of capos that are basically made of wood. They've got padding on the bottom, underside rather, to keep from scraping against the strings or causing any issues with your instrument. And this is going to fit right over the fretboard, as you can tell by its shape. And there's a little screw here, and that's going to go against this rubber stopper, which is going to go against the side of your fretboard. So once again, we're going to make sure that that doesn't scratch up your instrument at all. It's a fine piece of work, handmade by Mr. Ewing, and again, many other builders have these as well. So what we're going to do with the capo basically is we are going to reset the instrument so that the scale matches the key that we're going to be in, the target key. So let's say we're going to be looking at playing in the key of G major. The first thing we're going to do is look and find G on the bass string. That's right here at the 3rd fret. So the notes going across here are G, D, and then G an octave above. That's the same situation we have with DAD. We have D, A, and then D the octave above. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that capo, place it right down on the strings to the left of the fret, and then press down just hard enough to where you get a nice sound. Now if you get this kind of buzzing sound, that means you haven't pushed down hard enough. I want to push down just hard enough to get a nice clean tone. That sounds good. And then while you're pressing down, notice the finger position I've got here. I'm pressing equally across all the way across the capo. So I'm not going one way or the other way. I want to have a nice good contact with those strings. Once you know you've got that good sound, we just tighten up this and get that rubber block to go against the fretboard. You don't want to tighten it too tight, but tighten it enough to where it's not going to come back up. Now, what we can do is we can play our G scale from the 3rd fret to the 10th fret, not using any of the extra steps that we've got, and your drones are now going to match the G major scale. We once again have the root tone, which is G, and then we have D, which is the 5th. So with that root and 5 combination, anything we play on the melody string using the notes from the G major scale are going to sound wonderful in harmony. So once again, we can go ahead and just play our open chords. We don't have to put all of our fingers down on the strings at the same time, and our drone is going to match. So we can play drone melody, or we can close those chords up and we can go ahead and play the other chords as well. So let's say the fiddle player then decides to do an A tune. Same thing. We're going to basically take the root, the tonic of the key that we're playing in, or the name of the key, and find it on the bass string. And wherever that's located, that's where we're going to go ahead and put the capo. So we're going to slide this up to the 4th fret where A is located. Make sure we've got equal pressure going across. Give it a strum. Sounding good. Tighten that up so that it's snug with the side of the fretboard. Now we've got our root tone, A, on the bass string. And now we've got our 5th, E, on the middle string. And now we've got this nice harmony that will work for the A major scale. Now you'll notice that when we do this, we do have a Mixolydian flat 7th note there. We've got G instead of G sharp. So if you want to play completely in the key of A, you're actually going to want to start your A major scale from the bass string, and your G sharp is going to be right here at the 6.5 fret. So that's where it's really handy to know what notes are flat and what notes are sharp in each of the keys that we play, so that you can either engage them or avoid them, whatever you need to do. And I bring that up for a good reason, because putting your capo at the 4th fret most certainly does allow you to play in the key of A major with all the melody notes that we need and the chords and so forth. But you can also put your capo at the 4th fret to play in the key of A minor. Key of A minor has no flats and no sharps, while the key of A major has 3 sharps, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. So if you know what notes to flatten and what notes to sharp, then this is going to help you out, because there are a lot of tunes that we play in the key of A minor. So instead of me going like this perhaps, using the 6.5 fret with its C sharp and G sharp, maybe I'll avoid those now and use the 6th fret with C natural and G natural, and that's going to be a lot more conducive to playing in the key of A minor. So it's pretty versatile. It's a little tricky though, and you sort of have to know the rules of the key in order to be able to use that to your advantage and play it a lot more than just the key of D. Really, really cool stuff. Now, I'd like to point out that while I demonstrated 3 of the major keys, A, G, and D, and we looked a little bit at A minor, that where you play these on the fretboard is pretty easy. It's just a major. A major is a major is a major. However, there are different types of minors. So when you're capoing anywhere else other than the 3rd fret and the 4th fret, it's time then to consider what type of minor you're playing. And again, this might be a little deep for this, but I'll say, for example, the natural minor scale that we know and love is going to be found at the 1st fret. So in the case of DAD, this is going to put us in the key of E minor. So all we have to do is tighten that up there. Starting from the 1st fret, not using any of the extra steps, and playing to the 8th fret is going to give us the E minor scale. That's great for a lot of great tunes, you know, Rubens Train, I Am a Poor Wayfaring Stranger. A lot of the minor tunes we do tend to be in either E minor or B minor, and that's going to give you a proper E minor for the scale, for the chords, and everything else. But if we take this and we move it to the 2nd fret, You would not be wrong in thinking right off the bat that that would give us the ability, since we were playing F sharp at the second fret there on the bass string, that's going to give us F sharp minor. And that's not the case, because our assortment of half steps and whole steps, the scale that we have on the mountain dulcimer, if you don't have a fully chromatic fretboard, it comes from a mode called the Locrian mode. And that's an unusual sounding scale. Listen to this. Which is certainly not a natural minor scale. So a lot of the notes you're going to play there are going to be wrong for the case of F sharp minor. We can play F sharp minor, just not simply by capoing at the second fret. There's another way of getting around to do that. So be aware of that when we're capoing into major keys, then you can just kind of go ahead and go with it for the keys of G and A when we're capoed in. Of course, we have everything we need for the key of D. When it comes down to minor, we've got two areas where we've got everything we need. Capo 1 for key of E minor, Capo 5, it is Capo 4. Capo 4 for the key of A minor, and just knowing what notes to play and what notes to avoid. Other than that, things begin to get a little tricky. But that doesn't mean you can't have some fun there, just kind of messing around to see what these other scales will yield. And there's a lot of fun to be had there as well. So I did all of those just to show you how to use the capo and how handy it can be. Let me show you a couple of other different types of capos. This is the one you're going to see the most, and that basically is going to be just a basic wooden capo. Folkcraft makes them, Mike Clemmer makes them, and they're very, very simple, and they last forever. And I think Ron was making these for like 20 bucks at one point. And they got this nice little inlay in there with the mother of pearl. And they're great. I mean, every one of these wooden capos that I've purchased still exists, hasn't had any issues whatsoever if you treat it nicely. And every once in a while, maybe some of this here will come loose, and you can get another piece of rubber of some sort and just glue it in there. They really will last a lifetime. But there's this whole two-handed thing that's going on here all the time, and sometimes you really need to change keys very quickly, and that is where we take a look at these two little bits. This is the Walworth quick release capo. It looks a lot like a quick release capo that you would find on a guitar, and these are made partially of brass. They're a neat little thing. They're about $45, and they come with an Allen wrench. And one time, and you make sure you don't lose your Allen wrench, but basically what you want to do is you want to get it on your instrument, and then the set screw, which is right here. I suppose I should turn that around so you can actually see it. Here's the set screw, and that's where the Allen wrench will go into it. You want to get that down on your instrument and tighten the set screw to where it is snug against the side of your fretboard. And then once everything is good and set, you could put the Allen wrench away, keep it someplace close in case you want to put it on an instrument with a wider or a narrower fretboard. And once again, press down to make sure you have a nice cool sound going here. And then you just take this lever and you flip it down. That's kind of cool, huh? No twisting, nothing. You just put it on there and just flip the lever. When you want to take it off, you take the lever and you pull it back, and then you wiggle it off of there. So it's still a little snug between those little bumpers down there. We can take it to the 3rd fret, place it down there, get a good sound, and then press down the lever. Easy peasy. So I would highly recommend that for people who are playing in ensembles or are trying to do some key changes or getting from song to song and they don't want to fumble around with the screw on the side of the wooden ones. They can just use this quick release capo. Now you see I do have to wiggle it on and wiggle it off. So some people may prefer to use the wooden ones with the screw and have gotten very good and very quick about doing that changeover. That's the Walworth Capo. Very, very neat invention, and again, you can find these online in a number of different places. Elderly Instruments, I believe, has them. Gary Sager's PrussiaValley.com, Prussia Valley Dulcimers has them as well. Now, there is some speculation about this, that the Walworth is sort of a copy of this gem right here. This is my favorite. It may be ugly as sin and not looking very organic, but this is the bomb. This is the Dudley quick release capo. It is also made of brass, but as you can tell, it's also kind of built like a Hummer. It is just a crazy looking piece of equipment that looks very strange sitting on your dulcimer, but I want to show you how easy it is to apply this thing. Bam, over and done. There's no wiggling, there's no anything going on except for you getting your dulcimer capoed where you want it to go. The first time you used a Dudley, you're going to have that lever down, and just like on the wooden capo, you're going to have this end pin that you can screw in. So you're going to get that down right there on the fretboard. With the lever down, you're going to screw that in to where it's nice and snug, and you have a good sound. Then once that's nice and snug, you just lift that lever and it comes off, and it's ready to go. Boom. I can do it with one hand. I just move it over to 3. Boom. Very, very easy to work with. I've switched the capo to different locations in the middle of a song. Let's go ahead and, for fun of it, go to the 5th fret. Phrygian mode right there, sometimes called the Latin mode. It's a lot of fun to play in. So there is the Dudley quick release capo. This is my favorite capo. Bad news is that Mr. Dudley passed some time ago, and his family did have plans to start making these again. I don't believe they've done so at this point. So if you find one of these at a garage sale, estate sale, on eBay, grab it and grab others. Grab many of them. Because I love it. It's just a great, great piece of machinery here. And underneath you'll find, instead of rubber, there's leather or rawhide that is used to keep things from touching your instrument. And I've still got to put a little piece on the brass there. But I love it. People ask me all the time where I got this from. And I don't remember, but I've got 2 of them. And I'm hanging on to them as long as I possibly can. So there in a nutshell is basically the capo, our friend the capo, that enables us to quickly get into different keys or just different positions on the instrument to have those drones match so that we can play melody against the drones and have everything sound really, really nice together. There's a lot of really cool experimentation you can do just by placing this wherever you want to, and not necessarily playing in the key, not necessarily playing in the mode, but just wandering around without having to close all those chords and discovering some new adventures for yourself in the instrument. So I hope this has been helpful. I will dial into some of the other things I talked about specifically, like the modes and other things that you can use a capo for. But right now, if you don't have one, whatever it might be, whether it be a simple wooden one or the Walworth or something as complicated looking and hard to find as the Dudley. And there are other dulcimer capos out there as well. Maybe you're going to use a pencil and a rubber band. Whatever you use, have fun with it, because it does expand the horizon of the instrument just a little bit. Thank you for watching, everybody. And of course, thank you as always to my patrons on Patreon who helped me to produce this show, have been doing so for a number of years. If you're interested in checking out what I've got to offer on Patreon, you can just visit patreon.com/BingFutch. $5 a month gets you all of my back archives and everything I produce every single week. Or you can also subscribe for an entire year, get the annual pass for 16% off. That's 2 months free for $50.40 for the year. So come see me, download some stuff, have some fun, and we hope to see you next week right here on Dulcimerica. Where am I going to go out? I'm going to go out key of A minor.